This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
I'm Tom Hoppe, and I'm your host of the Most Painful Podcast. So mental health can have an impact on chronic pain. And in the next couple episodes, we're going to be speaking to experts on the connection between chronic pain and mental health. Today on the show, I would like to welcome Fardous Hosseiny, the CEO of Atlas, which was formerly the Center of Excellence for PTSD. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Yeah, great for having you with us, and thanks for taking the time. Maybe you can just start and tell us a little bit about what Atlas is and its role, its mission, just to get our listeners up to date.
Yeah, you mentioned in your preamble, Atlas Institute for Veterans and Families was originally established as the Center of Excellence on Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder and related mental health conditions, and it was through the Minister of Veterans Affairs from 2015 mandate letter that it was announced, and then the budget announced it in March 2017, and then we're operational in 2019 and really built it out during the pandemic, which I must admit has been quite difficult, trying to recruit, but also do consultation with veterans and their families in this kind of global pandemic that we're dealing with hasn't been the easiest, but thankfully we've leveraged technology to really have those conversations to ensure that the work that we do really makes sense for them. And you mentioned, the reason why we were formed was we really have to note that we're in existence today because of the long lasting advocated veterans who advocated for safe, meaningful care and support for veterans and their families. And they really were advocating for action. So, that's why we came into existence, and, I'm happy to speak to kind of our functions and our mandate and what it is that we're really trying to bring to life.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I think it'd be, to understand exactly what the function is, how it helps. I know a lot of times, care is strictly for the veteran, but we know the family is an important component. So it's nice to hear that you're looking at the family too, but maybe you can tell us some of the functions and kind of goals of what you're trying to achieve.
So what we call ourselves is an intermediary organization. So we're not government, but we're also not at the community level. So we don't offer direct service, but we're in that middle space where we're trying to take what we know in research, but apply it in practice. And that's really through our four functions. So the first is advancing new knowledge. And this is our quote unquote research arm of our organization. And that's, doing research out of the Institute, but working in close partnership with those in Canada and internationally to really move the markers for veteran family mental health research. And the way we do it is a little bit unique that I like to say is we really want to engage the veteran family voice from the onset. So it's kind of asking them, what is the questions you want research? Versus the researchers coming in and saying, this is what we want research. How can you, the veteran family member, help us? We've kind of flipped it on its head a little bit and said, okay, let's get the veteran family members from day one embedded in the work, and let's make sure that they're asking us and telling us what are the important research questions that need to be explored. And the second function is, knowledge mobilization. So there's nothing worse than doing research and then having it sit on a shelf, collecting dust, and not really leading to meaningful impact at the ground level. So that's why we've heavily invested in knowledge mobilization. And that's kind of taking the findings of research and delivering it in a vehicle that makes the most sense for the audience you're trying to get it to. So some academics mostly, appreciate reading 40-page journal articles, but the collective community might not appreciate that, and it might not make the most sense for them when they're in the midst of a crisis or in distress. So it's really taking those findings and distilling them to one-pagers, infographic, toolkits, webinars, video format, whatever makes sense for the audience you're trying to support. So whatever veteran family members want it in that kind of vehicle, in that format, that's really what knowledge mobilization is, taking those findings and getting to them that makes the most sense. The third arm is really our coaching and training. So although we don't offer direct service delivery, we do work with the many healthcare service providers across the country to ask, what is it that you want to get updated on, or to kind of finesse, or how do you want to be up to speed on the most recent treatment modalities? So it's really working with those healthcare providers to help up their game a bit. So if they want additional prolonged exposure therapy training, we offer that. Or if they want cognitive processing therapy, we work to help offer that as well. So it's kind of, an indirect way of supporting the veteran family member at the community level is working with those service providers to help them get up to speed on the most recent treatment modalities. And then our fourth function, we know that in isolation or on our own, we can only get so far, but together with the collective community, we can get so much further. So it's our convening and collaborating arm. And that's really working in partnership with, the other Center of Excellence on chronic pain, other organizations in this space to say, okay, what have you done that we can leverage? What is it that we're doing that you can leverage? And how can we provide some, wind beneath your sails, help amplify your work? So we're really there not to duplicate efforts. We're really not there to reinvent the wheel. We really want to move to the next level of mental health within the veteran family space. And that is in close collaboration with folks. And then the thing that embeds all of this, Tom, and it's one of the things that I'm most excited and actually proud of, is at Atlas, is how we've engaged lived experience and expertise in our work. And we know we really try to live up to that by veterans and families, for veterans and families, saying and mandate. And there's three ways we've done that. The first is at the executive level, sitting with me and sitting side by side with myself is, our National Strategic Advisor for Veterans, Brian, and then our National Strategic Advisor for Veteran Families, Larissa. And they help advise myself, but they also help advise the whole organization. So they work with each of those portfolios to make sure that the veteran family voice and fingerprint is on everything and all things that we do. So that's kind of the lived experience embedded. And then there's two other tiers. The first is our reference group. So it's what we call our extended family. So we have veterans, veteran families, service providers, and researchers. They meet on a quarterly basis, and, they help also give us, input from what they're hearing at the community level. So this way, Atlas is always aware of what's happening at the ground level. And then we can tap into them as a sounding board and gather information. So that's really something that I'm proud of what we've done at Atlas, is engaging and meaningfully engaging with the lived experience and expertise voices across the country.
That's, I think, good to hear. And it's because sometimes the veteran voice is forgotten, or there's just too many of them out there. I mean, we know in the veteran space, there could be a lot of confusion, a lot of information, especially with social media. So getting veterans involved and getting the proper information out, I think is key. So, and also, like you talk about the connection with other centers of excellence, like we know that chronic pain and mental health go together. We've seen some research on that. So it's, connecting with the CPCOE and yourself, it seems like a good avenue. So what kind of research projects has Atlas been involved in, and has there been anything kind of, an aha moment that you yourself or other people have seen that has come out of those research projects that we weren't aware of?
Yeah, so early on when we were kind of just prior to the pandemic, we had a chance to kind of go across the country, and not really across, really a couple of central hubs in Vancouver and Calgary. We had a chance to sit down with veteran family members, and there was the construct of moral injury came up quite a bit. And, folks were talking about, fear and anxiety, and they're like PTSD that addresses that, but I'm not really feeling that. I'm feeling more shame, guilt, and betrayal, which, are kind of the central tenets of moral injury. And, so we said, okay, let's further explore this. And sometimes, what we're finding is just naming that for veterans and their families, that is quite powerful. So it's an area we've kind of put our stake in the ground, is that we're going to better understand what is the construct of moral injury, how does it show up, from a symptomology perspective, and what is it that we can then do if we know it's quite distinct from PTSD. And there is still a healthy debate within the space. Is it a subset of PTSD? Is it a diagnosis and that it should be on its own and recognize its own? There's a healthy conversation. But if you talk to veterans, they will tell you that, yes, moral injury resonates with the injury that I'm dealing with. It had more to do with not being able to intervene when I wanted to, or the rules of engagement didn't allow for me to do something that really challenged my moral code, and I wanted to intervene. So we're hearing that quite a bit. That early, days of consultation really was a bit of an aha moment for us. Was, okay, this is something that we're gonna explore. So we're looking to develop and clinical scale. It's been validated in the research space, but it now needs to be validated at the clinical space. So, really excited to move that needle forward. And the second was, and it'll be no surprise to your listeners and folks in the space, was the power of peer support. And this came up in almost every conversation that we've had with veteran family members, is the importance and the role of peer support in their recovery journey. So, this is, again, one of those spaces that, if not, done correctly, like in the sense of if you don't know what kind of peer support you're getting, it can be quite damaging, unfortunately. If it's not following space safe guidelines, it can unfortunately not do much, or it can be very beneficial. So we want to kind of develop some minimum guidelines for folks that are offering peer support to say, okay, if you are, this is what it should look like. These are the parameters you need to have in place, because we want to ensure people are doing it in a safe and effective way. So that, moral injury, peer support came up a lot. And, something that we're now noticing is that certain populations within the veteran community are underrepresented, so in the research space. So women veterans is one. We know it's the fastest growing group of veterans in Canada. So we have to make sure that, we're also identifying and addressing their unique needs. And, we have to do that through research, through asking the important questions and working with them hand in hand to be able to then develop the resources that they'll need to be able to support them in their recovery process.
And maybe for our listeners, and we go back to moral injury, you can maybe describe what that might mean.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, PTSD is fear and anxiety based, but moral injury is more around the shame, guilt, and betrayal. And unfortunately, when you look at kind of definitions, there's 17, recent systematic review found almost 17, I think 17 or 18 different variations of the construct of moral injury. So, when you look at definitions, it's quite surprising that there isn't one that uniformly everyone agrees upon. But if you kind of collect the different tenets of it, if you look at Jonathan Shea, who's a psychiatrist who worked with, war veterans of the Vietnam War, and then you look at the work of Dr. Brett Litz at Boston University, kind of what there is an agreement upon is that moral injury refers to the psychological, social, and spiritual impact of events involving betrayal or transgression of one's deeply held moral beliefs and values occurring in high-stakes situations. So, the betrayal can happen directly by yourself, being not able to do it, or also witnessing someone else transgressing that, again, challenges your deeply held moral beliefs. So kind of that's the most accepted definition of moral injury is, the psychological, social, and spiritual impact of events involving betrayal or transgressions of one's own deeply held moral beliefs and values.
So from what I'm hear you saying, a veteran may not necessarily be suffering with a traumatic event, but may be suffering with the challenges of what they had to do overseas that may not line up with their moral values, and then come back to Canada and have to kind of readjust or live through that. Am I understand that correctly?
Yeah. So again, just like, any and not all traumatic events will lead to post-traumatic stress disorder. When you're witnessing a moral injurious event or potentially morally injurious event, it won't lead to moral injury. But if you're collected, day in, day out feeling it, and you feel that you're marked by that experience where you're unable to sleep, or you're, also starting to question the morality of what's good and right, you lose trust in humanity, then that's saying, you've been marked by that experience and you might be dealing with moral injury. Again, it's not a formal diagnosis in the DSM yet, so that's what we're really kind of hoping the research will get us to a place where we can say definitively that, someone is dealing with a moral injury. But, the symptoms show up, and you've talked to clinicians, and you talk to veterans, they'll tell you, yeah, this is something that really resonates with me.
That's interesting. And it's the same with the peer support you were talking to. I mean, there's many veterans we've spoken to who say peer support is great. However, sometimes it only gets me so far because the peer themselves hasn't transitioned out of the military mindset. They're still there. So they've taken me to a certain point. So I like what you say where peer support is good as long as it's the right peer support. So, and that's the research that you guys that Atlas is working on as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So we kind of first started, with any research process, kind of reviewing the literature, what's been done, what has been said, kind of getting a lay of the land. Sorry. So understanding, okay, this is what's already been explored, and we kind of have that in our back pocket. And then the second was we effectively try to map out all the peer support work that's being done in this country. So, going from province to province and territory to territories to understand, okay, what peer support is being offered. And we kind of want to just first have it all there to say, this is the kind of peer support being offered. And then invite all these organization individuals under the tent to help together build the minimum guidelines. So say, okay, what are the guidelines that we can all adhere by to ensure that our peer support or the peer support work that's being offered is safe and effective.
So this would be first of its kind for veterans and to have this kind of a guideline and And so it's something tangible that will help at the grassroots level.
Yep, it's building off of the work from Stefan Grenier and the team out of the Mental Health Commission of Canada, who developed peer support guidelines for mental health providers in general, or the mental health, the general population. But as you and I will know, Tom, the culture within the military and the veteran population is very different. So you have to make sure that that is captured in the work. So it's kind of building off of some of that foundational and pivotal work. So it's not, again, reinventing the wheel completely, but it is adding that important contextual and cultural lens that may have been missing in the first iteration.
Yeah. So the gap of, I like to use the analogy, trying to cross the gap through the minefield that's missing, which is the culture and identity and mindset piece, which maybe needs to be added into the treatments. From what we're hearing you say and what we've heard other experts say, it's kind of that's the gap that's missing at this point in time for veterans. And so when we talk about, that sounds like a good resource, is to have, when this gets done, is to have a guideline for peer support. And and then the other one, of course, is a moral injury. Are there any other ones that that the Atlas is currently working on or is available for veterans to tap into, or their families to tap into?
Yeah, another topic that has gotten a lot of the rightful attention right now is the work in military sexual trauma right now. So we've developed kind of infographic and toolkits to help service providers, but also to help those who may be struggling on how to get the support that they need. So MST is a big one that is important for us. Suicide in the veteran community, again, will always be something that we unfortunately have to work towards. So can we get to zero suicide? Can we ensure that those supports and resources are available to veterans and their family members? And then the work, and I think you highlighted it early, and it's something that we've kind of said is important to us from the get-go, is that families are not seen as an afterthought. So our work within the family space is, separate, treating the family member as its own unique individual unit and not in, parallel to how it supports the veteran. Of course, if you help support the family, it's going to help support the veteran. But what are the unique needs and individualistic needs of the family member that we have to address? So there's some work that we're doing there, looking at, how parents need to get support, how children of veterans need to get support, how spouses and partners of veterans need to get support. So really the family lens is not lost, and you'll see in the way we've set up our organization with 2 strategic advisors and the reference groups, families are always there front and center. And, I think as you mentioned in our conversation, is that it's so important to the veteran. If you know that their family member is being taken care of, they're going to also rally and make sure that they get the supports they need. So there's a lot of work that we're doing and developing resources for there. And our vision, honestly, Tom, is to be that one-stop shop, to be that knowledge hub, to be that central repository. And, unfortunately, we've heard, veteran family members scouring the internet at 2 to 3 in the morning, Googling this, Googling that, trying to find something that makes sense for them. And, there's all those great resources in Canada. There's all this great research done in Canada, but it's not maybe centrally housed somewhere. So our vision with our website and our knowledge hub is to be that one-stop shop, so that you don't need to be scouring and Googling these different things. And, if you're looking to learn more about what PTSD is, what are the symptoms, what are the supports you may need to know, what is moral injury, what is the role of peer support, why is it difficult to transition, what are the unique needs of certain populations? These are all things that people want information and access to, but they don't have it widely available to them. And if it is available, it might not be available in the vehicle that makes the most sense to them. So that's kind of our vision, is to be that central hub when it comes to any work as it pertains to mental health within the veteran family member community.
And the good thing, it's evidence-based research,
right?
Mm-hmm. The information, same as the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence. This is one of the reasons why we're running this podcast, is to make sure we're getting evidence-based research and information. Like you said, get it out that is manageable to read. So it's not, instead of 40 pages, we're doing a 1-page like infographic or on the internet or on your website and that kind of thing too. So, similar to what Dr. Melanie Knowles doing with intergenerational pain within veterans too, is including the family. So I think it's good to hear that the family is now part of the process, because for so long it has been centered on the veteran, which is important. But if you don't have your family, what do you have really at the end of the day? So.
Yeah, it's those central tenets of purpose, meaning, belonging, and hope that, we've heard come up quite a bit. And, if you take care of the support system of the veteran, and again, the families can be their chosen families. So, including a very large and open definition of family. But if you take care of those folks around the veteran, then it's going to help them out as well in their recovery journey.
So for our listeners, if they Google Atlas, will come to you, or is that maybe you can give us more of a direct link to your site if they're looking for information and want to learn more about what your organization does?
Absolutely, at atlasveterans.ca. We do have a sign up sheet there, where you can get access to all of our resources as we release them. So we're happy to have more and more people join our email list, our social Atlas Veterans, on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, I believe. And yeah, there's opportunities for us. We really want to share the stories of veteran family members from their perspective, as told by them. And, we recently did a campaign where we said, okay, what is the reality and what is it that it looks like for veterans and veteran family members as they transition back into civilian life? So it's kind of bringing to the forefront their lived experience and lived perspectives. So it's really important.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for your time and for all the work that you and your organization do to help veterans. And I appreciate the time being on the show today.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you for your work. And something I recently had a chance to read a bit of your book. And, when you said there that any leadership journey must start somewhere, and when something is wrong, don't wait for someone else to fix it. So it's really important lesson for both of our, the Institute and the Center for Chronic Pain, Center of Excellence for Chronic Pain, is we're both relatively new, but we have these guideposts that have been developed by veteran family members. So it's really important that we work together, share our mission, share that aligned mandate, and move ahead to create something that truly shows veterans and their families we have their backs, because they've made the most significant sacrifices for us, and we have to make sure we have their backs now.
Well, and I appreciate that, because I know my first time that I met Dr. Marish Zacharias at the CPCOE when he was starting up there is the passion of the clinicians and the researchers to help. And I think that is a breath of fresh air, I must say, that passion to help. And it is appreciated. I can tell you that. So thank you very much once again. So for our audience, our next show, we're going to carry on with this discussion on mental health and the relationship it has to pain. For feedback about the show or for more information on chronic pain, you can visit our website, veteranschronicpain.ca, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Chronic Pain COE, and on Instagram or Chronic Pain _COE. Once again, thank you for being on the show, and awesome work. And for our listeners, stay safe and keep hope alive.
The Most Painful Podcast is produced for the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence by Story Studio Network and Eye Contact Productions.